Loong, our famous dragon. The longest imperial dragon in the world. Cheers to Son Robert, great to see you down today. We thought with the rain threatening he mightn't be here, but here he is. 90,000 birds.
For my family, the Toi Shan Cafe was a beginning for our life in Australia. For the Australian people, it offered them a new taste in food, a different kind of culture. I think at first glance at really what Chinese people were all about.
The Chinese cafe has become an Australian institution. Every town or suburb has one. The Chan family has run the Toi Shan in Bendigo for 3 generations. The story of their restaurant is very much the story of the Chinese in Australia. When Gladys Chan began as a waitress in the 1930s, a meal of sweet and sour pork would have been considered exotic. But for most Australians, the Chinese cafe was their first experience of another culture.
I loved my customers that used to come in. I used to fight with them. I used to argue with them, and they'd be back the next, days, and I had some good times there with them. Oh, I used to argue about either football or something like that, or, oh, you've got to pay me now, and they'd say, oh, I've paid. I said, you have not paid. And, we used to argue and argue, and then I said, oh, here.
The Toi Shan Cafe gave my mother and father a beginning in life. My father came out to Australia from the Toi Shan province in China early in the 1940s. He first came to Australia via Melbourne, where he worked in restaurants and cafes. Then he came to Bendigo, where he purchased the Toi Shan restaurant, where my mother was waitressing. My mother is an Australian-born Chinese whose parents lived in the district as well.
I suppose I've got nothing to growl about. Only us oldies never enjoyed life like we should have. We were too wrapped up with the children and work and earning the money and that, Well, you had to learn how to do the vegetables and had to learn how to pluck the chooks. I could never kill them, but I'd pluck them and do all the meat, get everything prepared, cut up the chickens and get the dim sims on, steaming ready. It was a responsibility, because for the customers we didn't like to keep them waiting. We had to have everything ready for when they wanted it.
And Gladys, what sort of people used to come in?
Oh, we got all sorts. Yes, we got from high government people used to come up, visit us, and in the police force, some of them used to come up and, buy some dim sims and that, and, oh, we got all sorts. People from the hotels, oh, we used to get all of those in here.
And you had your children while you were working here?
Well, I had one first little boy, and then another little girl come along. We had 3 children here. Gee, it's messy out here now. It was all cleared up when I put my kiddies out here to play a while back. And I used to put Bill sitting in his rocking horse. He got stuck, and we had to cut him out of it. Joan was in her pram. Of course, there was another one come after Joan. It was 3 of them I used to have out here. And then there's this big enormous wood heap. And we used to use the wood for the fuel stove. We used to cook our chickens over it and get the hot water from it. Alan had a chicken house here, and he used to put the chickens in that he never had time to finish, but he used to do them the next day, and the drains were there, and the taps and the troughs were over there. He used to kill them, pluck them, and hang them up to drain, and then put them in the troughs to wash. And he'd do the other chickens the next day.
It was the first Chinese cafe in Bendigo. It gave people an alternative to the cuisine they were already used to. I think restaurants in those days were few and far between, let alone a Chinese restaurant. The meals I think you'd get at Bendigo would be mainly hotel meals, which would be steak and eggs, grills, that type of thing. My father offered something new. It was a novelty and unique for people to go out to a shop front, walk in and have a meal at a restaurant. Even if they didn't like the food, Dad still had the steak and eggs on the menu.
What sort of food was popular?
Fried rice was always the most popular, I think. Steak and veggies, very much what's around now. Dim sims, you know.
Did Australians get to like it? What happened? Period of
Again, yeah, it took a while to catch on like anything. And there was always the stories about what was really in the food, I think. And they used to joke about that, you know, about the couple of cats that used to be out the back and that weren't there anymore.
One night, one chappie come in, he said, "Gladys," he said, "I'm sure you've got cat in this one." And I said, "Sorry, mate, we run out of cat. We're using dog tonight." And he said, "Oh, we should get more meat off it than..." But, oh, it was pretty good, you know.
My father came over from China to Australia in the 50s, and he worked with my Uncle Alan and Auntie Gladys at the Toi Shan. In the 60s, my parents took over the Toi Shan from them and have run it as a family business for about 20 years. And now my brother Phillip is running it by himself with his wife and family. It's a family business and everybody helps out, even the kids and I.
Short soup?
That was me.
That was yours? And long soup.
It was hard for my brother when he came over. He had to work all the time at the Toi Shan, and because he didn't speak English very well, he couldn't communicate with people, and so it was hard for him to make friends. At that time, I think people were very narrow-minded, and it caused him a bit of trouble. He wasn't too happy going to school or anything like that.
The restaurant normally finishes 1 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, I go to school, come straight back here, go back home, go to school, every day the same.
You must have been tired every day at school.
That's why I drop out. That's how, yeah.
Are you sorry about that?
Not really. I understand my father's situation, you know. If I doesn't help him then, nobody else would.
When Phil's side of the family began running the Toi Shan in the 50s, their circumstances were typical of many post-war migrants. With little education or English language, the family business was their one chance of a better life. A century before, thousands of Chinese came to the Victorian goldfields in search of their fortunes. Many came from Toi Shan province in southern China. They brought with them much of their culture and traditions, which slowly became a part of the local community. When Gladys Chan was growing up in Bendigo in the 30s, Chinese faces were still commonplace. though much of the Chinese community had drifted away or intermarried. Do you know much about your family's history in Bendigo?
Not much, only that my grandfather was a miner, you know, and his father was, before him, was a miner, and... Because we didn't go much into our backgrounds in them days. It was, oh, we got mum and dad, and we got grandma and that, you know. We didn't seem to think about their past.
And there were Chinese people in your family in the back?
Yes, yes.
How did your family think about that? Was that something...
Oh, no, we just lived day by day like anyone else. We didn't worry much, you know.
Did it mean, though, that you did things like had Chinese things in the house or ate different food when you grew up?
No, in them days, no. My granny used to cook rice and a bit of cabbage chop suey, she used to call it, and that's all, a little bit of soup. They used to go up and buy dim sims. She never used to cook much different, and steak and omelettes and things like that, that's all. But then in the Depression days, you were lucky even to get a bit of sugar to use, you know.
Did you know many Chinese people?
Oh, yes, a lot of students used to come in, and a lot of market gardeners, and used to bring the vegetables in, and it was a good crowd.
What did your family think about you marrying a Chinese person?
Well, they told me that life would be hard. You know, of course, they've probably gone through the same thing. But they said, well, if you want to, you just make your bed, you lay on it. You know, you just can't change your mind once you're married.
Tell me about bringing up a Chinese family in Bendigo. Was that hard?
No, it was pretty good. Because all mine were like rabbits, you know, 1 year between each one of them, and they helped to look after each other. They were good children. I had not a bit of worry with them. I hope the chicken's nice. Sticky on the fingers. How's it going, Joy?
I think it's hot enough, isn't it?
It turned up a little bit. It's going to be just a little bit. That's right. Good. Thank you.
Well, we've always been close. We still are close. I think Bendigo, we had our own circle of friends, and most families knew each other. You didn't get lost in Bendigo. It was good. It was a family that came first, and we had to look after each other. So I think that made us a lot closer.
I think so.
And to look after each other. I suppose because we were one of six, we had to look after the older ones had to look after the younger ones, and then look after mum and dad too.
Do you remember, though, your mother working hard when you were little girls?
Yeah, always, yes. I don't think I ever seen her go to bed. I don't think she ever did. She always looked tired. There was always children around. Well, we were always around you, always around your dress, your apron.
I enjoyed it, though. They were good kids.
So, Joy, when your father was with his Chinese friends, did he enjoy the chance to speak Cantonese with them?
All the time. Well, see, nobody at home spoke. Mum doesn't speak Cantonese. Dad did try to teach it to us as young children, but it didn't really work out. But he relished the times to get out and actually fluently speak it, you know, and I think he quite enjoyed it. We used to all just sit there at the table, 7 of us, and Dad would be off talking away. At times people would come up and talk to him and we didn't even know what he was talking about. You know, you'd often get a glance and a smile and a laugh, but you wouldn't know exactly what he was saying.
And what did you think about that, Gladys? Did you want to know
Well, you're in Australia now. You must talk Australian because we can't talk Chinese. And we don't know what you're going on about. And he left it at that. He did try to learn one of the boys that speak Chinese when he was only little. And the teacher sent a letter home to say she couldn't understand either language because he got all mixed up with it. So I said, that's it, only English.
You did know a few words, though, didn't you?
Oh, a little few.
You learned in the cafe days.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say them.
Well, my family is a very traditional Chinese family, and when my brothers were old enough, they had to go back to Hong Kong and find a wife and get married. And I suppose that was the way they had to do it then. They had to go back and find wives. They accepted that that was the way it had to be done then.
Gong got married in 1971. Come back here. We back there out for a few years, you know. The only thing is we work 6-7 days a week, never go out, you know, and trying to save a bit of money. That's the way, you know, things is.
And your wife, Kim, worked here?
Yes.
And tell me what that was like for home.
Home life?
Mm-hmm.
No home life? No, there's no such thing as a home life. Well, since my wife come over here from Hong Kong, she start straight, you know, in here. And, well, we spend 24 hours a day together, you know, working. Go home. Usually the TV is finished by then. Yeah, so go on straight to bed. Next day, 10 o'clock, get up and start working. There's no home life.
What do you think about that?
Hard life. Not funny. It's hard life. Yeah.
What about for your children?
Well, when the kids grow up, you know, they go to school. When I went to parent-teacher interview, yeah, the teacher asked me how the kid is. I say, oh, you saw them more than I do. Because maximum I saw them is about half an hour a day. That's all.
You never saw them grow up?
Not really. Never spent much time at all.
Our parents have based their lives around the restaurant because the restaurant takes up so much of the time. They sleep and eat according to the times of the restaurant, and they don't have much time for social gatherings and things.
If you had your childhood again, would you have your parents working at the Toi Shan?
Probably not. I would rather with them working from a 9-to-5 job, but that would be very hard for an Asian family to find another job like that in Bendigo. Oh no, it's hard work. You know, I don't want my kids to be treated the same way as I've been. Yeah, it just takes a lot out of you, I suppose.
But Phil, you must be aware, though, that your parents have worked hard in the Toi Shan to give you a different life.
Yeah, I am actually. You know, they work their fingers to the bone and all that, and they get their rewards. And it's just the social problems, I suppose. So you got problems like to talk about, you got nothing to do. Like an average family or something like that, their father has a good job and their mother's just at home. And some kids, they get along, you know, really well with their parents. And they, you know, when they have problems at school or something like that, they'll just go to their parents and talk. Oh no.
What sort of lives would you like your children to have?
Oh, much better than ours, I hope. Yeah. First thing is not in a restaurant. Yeah, if they can, you know, do better at school, they might get a better jobs. Yeah.
Yes, if you had your time again, would you do something different?
Could be. Yeah, could be. But if and when the opportunity come, you know, but everybody else have to do something else. Yeah, not everyone's born out to be a millionaire or something, you know, into this world.
可以秒咗啦。呢個唔係佢嘅，呢個係個 home delivery 嚟嘅。哦。咁你份嘢單呢？Jimmy 攞咗佢。Dim sims, 2 sweetened corn soups, scallop chops, 3 large small prawns fried rice.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank
See
you.
you later.
Bye-bye.
I've gone through college and got my degree in accounting and computing.
Steamed or fried?
I don't want to work in the restaurant business, much too hard. Chinese people have to get away from that image because we'd all be portrayed as just working as restaurants, in Chinese restaurants.
How important is maintaining Chinese traditions for you?
I think it's quite important because I look Chinese, don't I? So I still think of myself as Chinese.
The first stroke of this tin is a horizontal line, but if you change it into like this,
I know enough about being Australian, but I don't know enough about being Chinese.
change this word into another. That means yao.
Especially reading and writing. I don't know anything about that, and I want to know as much about China as possible, about my past, my relatives back in China and Hong Kong, Chinese culture.
Every stroke is fixed. We cannot alter the freely.
What sort of a role do you think the Toi Shans played for the family?
Well, it's been good. It's provided us with with a living here in Australia. If we didn't have it, I don't know what we'd be doing at the moment.
Unlike their parents, the next generation of Chans are free to choose their own futures. Raymond is in his final year of high school and makes hamburgers for pocket money. His ambition is to work in computers. Once the Toi Shan was Bendigo's only cafe. Today's taste reflects very different times. Where Chinese takeaway was once the fashion, today's fast foods have taken their place.
Already prepared for it.
Near the inside, and back behind them, Golden Bounty bare fist lifting on the rails. But the judge the first time now. Reckless Duke has taken over the.
Is there a future, do you think, for a Chinese cafe like this one?
Oh, always will be, you know, because different people have different tastes, and as long as you're there, you know, people comes in, and like Toi Shan, for instance, well, some people may come in here one generation after another generation, you know. And
The Toi Shan might leave your family soon.
maybe, yeah, I intend, you know, moving out, you know, if time suits.
Because it's another phase of your life? You want to spend more time doing something else?
Yes. When you spend 30 years in one place, I think it's long enough. Maybe too long. Yeah.
Did anybody else want some chicken?
Thank you.
Is that nice?
Thomas.
For Gladys Chan and her family, the Toi Shan is little more than a reminder of their past. In the 30 years since Gladys last waited on tables, her family have grown up, been educated, have professional careers, and have now started families of their own.
Do you like Nanny's cooking, Matthew?
Are you glad the girls and the boys didn't go into the restaurant?
Oh, very glad, very glad. Yes, they made a wise choice. Yes, because I'd never stuck it out, you know. It's a full-time job and in the hot kitchen amongst the fat and that all the time. It's not very pleasant.
How would you feel, or how will you feel, when the Toi Shan leaves the Chan family?
If it leaves the Chan family, I'll be very sad. It was the beginnings of my mother and father. It was of their life in Bendigo. It was very good beginnings for them, and I think it would be nice to keep it within the family, like a tradition. I think you'd always like it to be there.
A Big Country returns next Friday at 8. Coming up shortly, our movie of the week, Bells Are Ringing.